Since 1954, Godzilla has become one of the most popular kaijus ever, but he's had many foes. And while it may be fun to see what they're going to do to us humans and to see them fight, it may be even more fun to see how they die. And here in this video, that's what we're going to discuss. I'm Alex, back with Urban Blocks, and today we're going to do the top 10 most gruesome Godzilla and enemies deaths. Let's get started. Before we start, we have a few rules. 1, these are my opinions. There may be some deaths that you think are more gruesome than others. And 2, we're only counting movies that I've seen. And I haven't seen all of them. I've seen most of them, but not all of them. So let's just start. Starting off this list, we have Mechagodzilla from the Showa era. We're going to be including both films because they both basically experienced the same death. But really, Mechagodzilla is not really like a normal kaiju. He's like a robot, so he probably didn't feel that much pain. That's the reason we're keeping Mechagodzilla so low. If he was not robotic, we would put him much higher. The way Mechagodzilla dies is that Godzilla actually rips off his head and then causes an explosion with his atomic breath. And in the sequel, Godzilla throws him into a hole after ripping off his head, and then atomic breaths him, which finishes him off. In the number 9 spot, we have the male Muto. Now, this is kind of breaking a rule because I've not seen the entire Godzilla 2014 film, but I've seen how the male Muto dies and how the female Muto dies, and well, I'm going to count this because the male Muto just has a very brutal and dark death. The way the male Muto dies is he gets slammed into a building with Godzilla's tail, and as if that wasn't painful enough, he gets stabbed with 2 pillars, and well, I think you know that's the way you know that somebody's dead. And while the male Muto's death was very painful and gruesome, I still think the female Muto's was more painful, which we're going to get to in a minute. But now, moving on to number 8. Okay guys, these next few deaths are going to be because Godzilla atomic breathed inside their mouths, which is definitely more painful than these last 2 deaths. Starting this new way to die is Biollante. Now, Biollante was already a pretty disgusting creature, but his death made it a bit more disgusting. Anyway, he starts by getting his arms, or tentacles, whatever, getting cut off because of Godzilla's atomic breath. And then Godzilla atomic breaths inside his mouth, which makes part of his skin come off and makes that glowing thing in the center of his belly sound like it's electrocuting, which definitely is a very painful way to go. While the male Muto might have had a very painful death, it's nothing compared to the female Muto. While Lieutenant Ford tries to drive away on the boat from the female Muto catches him, and before he's about to get destroyed by the female Muto, Godzilla grabs onto the female Muto and atomic breaths in her mouth. The reason we're putting female Muto's death higher than Biollante's is because of what happens after Godzilla atomic breaths inside of her mouth. While Biollante only lost some of his skin and got electrocuted a bit, which is definitely pretty painful, the female Muto's head comes off entirely, which is way, way more painful. Guys, we're very sorry, but we weren't able to put in this next clip. But it was supposed to be Anguirus because we think it's just a very sad and very gruesome death. But sorry, we weren't allowed to put it in or this video would get blocked, and we didn't want that. So, yeah, let's move on. Entering the top 5, we have Ghidorah from Destroy All Monsters. This is a very gruesome death because of a few reasons. The first reason is because it's a beat-down death, which means he was beat up to death. And it's very painful for 2 reasons. And 1, because that's a lot of hits taken, and it's very painful. And 2, all of this was happening when he was alive. So really, he was probably hoping they would put him out of his misery and all the pain, which definitely makes it way darker, which is why we're putting him so high. And those attacks that they were using on him were messed up, like stepping on his neck and making him bleed out of his mouth. At number 4, we have the first Godzilla death, which is Godzilla from Planet of the Monsters. I like how they were able to set down Godzilla's shield, which meant they could send the EMP harpoons into his body and send electromagnetic waves into him, which made him weaker and actually made him explode. Yeah, you heard me right. Godzilla exploded. Some of you might be wondering why this isn't number 1. Well, that's the fact that our number 3s are basically the same and very, very gruesome and dark. Let's move on to number 3. Starting the top 3, we have Mothra from King of the Monsters. Like Anguirus' death, this is a very sad death because she did it on purpose to save Godzilla. Now, before she even dies, she webs up Ghidorah to a building, and while it looks like Mothra and Godzilla are going to get out very well, out of nowhere, guess who comes in? The other flyer, Rodan. Mothra and Rodan duel it out in a flying battle, and guess who comes out victorious? It's Mothra. Yeah. Mothra ends up stabbing Rodan, but it almost hits his neck, but hits his wing instead, which, if it did stab him in the neck, we would probably put him on this list. But Mothra, even though she defeats Rodan, she still meets her end. Mothra meets her end by flying up to Ghidorah, and I don't know what she was trying to do, but she ends up getting hit by his electricity and gets disintegrated, which starts our disintegration section. Our number 1 and our number 2 were also disintegrated, and we think their deaths were more painful than Mothra's. Guys, the number 2 and the number 1 were actually pretty difficult to think about which one was more gruesome. I spent a few minutes deciding which one, but I finally made up my mind, and let's move on to number 2. In our number 2 spot, we have our second Godzilla death from the first Godzilla movie ever. After attacking Japan, they finally had enough, and they created the Oxygen Destroyer, a very powerful weapon that was able to disintegrate Godzilla's skin and even his bones, which that's definitely way more painful than Mothra's death. One way we really know that Godzilla was very hurt from this is death roar that we heard, which definitely sounded like he was not having a fun time. And if you know what I'm saying, there's just something about the original that makes it just so much better, and like it's just the classic death of Godzilla. It just makes it, it's what started Godzilla and started him dying. So let's just move on to number 1. if you're a Godzilla expert and you saw that Godzilla's original death isn't at number 1, that means you should know what number 1 is. Say it with me. Ghidorah from King of the Monsters. Of course it's Ghidorah from King of the Monsters. I don't think I've seen a worse death than Ghidorah's. Not worse as it's a bad death, it's an awesome death scene, but in gruesome. Oh, this is just really dark and gruesome. You may know that he got disintegrated, but he also had maybe something worse that happened. Because of Godzilla's new power-up, well, his wings actually got burnt to a crisp and actually looked like he had hands for a moment. And then the same thing happens to 2 of his heads. Yeah, he loses 2 of his heads. And if that wasn't deadly enough, Godzilla then stomps on his body and Ghidorah somehow gets electrocuted. When the buildings rumble, we actually see Ghidorah's head, and it looks like he survived. Well, not exactly. Godzilla grabs one of Ghidorah's heads, puts it in his mouth, and then, unlike female Muto and Violante, where his atomic breath went in, his atomic breath went out of his mouth. Because of everything that happened to Ghidorah in his final moments, we have no choice but to give him the gold medal for most gruesome death. But what do you think? Do you think there's a death that we mentioned that's more gruesome than others? Or do you think there's a death that wasn't on this list that you think was very gruesome? Let us know in the comments, and I hope you all enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss a brand new video. We're going to try to hit 1,000 views on this, and if that happens, we're getting a new channel name and a new logo. So if this gets over 1,000 views, be on the lookout for that, and I'll see you all in the next one.